Perfect. So, hi, and welcome back to my PCOS Life, where we talk all things polycystic ovary syndrome. Today, we have Dr. Weiss, who is an OBGYN expert and a hormonal expert, and also the co founder of Provation Life. Um, so, if you want to just start with the introduction about yourself and the brand.
Great. Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure. I'm a little bit old school, and this is an entire new format, and I think it's really important. So just to give you a little bit of history about myself. So I'm an OBGYN. I went to the Ohio State University College of Medicine, graduated, went to Einstein residency where I learned women's health and specialized in taking care of bread and butter OBGYN delivered babies, surgeries, etc. And I was treated women for about a dozen years in the States, or a little bit less than that, in New York, and I got an MBA from George Washington University. My idea was to kind of look at to expand my following, so to speak. I saw what was happening with medicine, that doctors were having less and less time to talk to patients. They were having less and less time to really help them, and just kind of say, "Here's a medication, out the door. Here's another medication, out the door." And that we were losing that interaction, and I felt a little bit, kind of upset, like having to see more and more patients over the course of a day, and having less and less interactions with them. Patients were coming in demanding X, Y, or Z, and you know more or less what to give them, and you give it to them, they're out the door, and you're losing that contact. We moved to Israel in 2008 after our house burnt down, actually, and we kind of reinvented ourselves. I started my own medical device company. Then I was in pharmaceutical at Teva, and then I went to another company. Always continue to see patients. And one of the big unmet needs in medical care, specifically in women's health, is really hormonal balance and PCOS. Unfortunately, a lot of the research and development that's happened in the last, I don't know, 15, 20, few decades, has unfortunately gone away from developing drugs for women's health because of the safety issues, because of the reproductive health issues, and when they start trying to help women, conceive, you really have to test those medications for a long, long time for safety issues, obviously, and for making sure that fetal development issues, if they are successful in conception. So people really haven't been spending a lot of time on PCOS, and I've spoken to a ton of doctors, and they're all like, well, the patient comes in, that she's got PCOS just by looking at her. And that if she wants to conceive, you're going to send her to a fertility specialist. And if she doesn't want to conceive, you're going to put her on the birth control pill. And I just shook my head. I go, but there's so much medicine that you could do in between that and that. There's so much, counseling and just talking to them and just saying, hey, what are your goals and aspirations? What do you want to do? And what bothers you the most about the PCOS? And very often the patients come in, being misdiagnosed or not diagnosed and just given the birth control pill for years and years. I can't tell you how often patients come to me and said, my doctor said I was infertile. And I was like almost crying, literally. I was so upset because first, as a doctor who sees this patient, I have to undo the damage that was done, the amounts of information that she gets from like Google or other, non-healthcare, and even the healthcare practitioners who are not, I wouldn't say not good, not smart, not good doctors, but they're not sensitive or not delivering the message in the right way. So there's this huge gap of patients getting birth control pills versus infertility, and there's so much that can be done. And really, that's why I created Provation Life, and I wanted to base this company on education, on helping patients get the answers that they're looking for. I I want patients to be knowledgeable so that when they go and sit down with their healthcare provider, they can have a good conversation and already start at an advanced level and come in with, and say, hey, I know this, that, and the other thing. Does that apply to me? How can I apply it to me? What can I do? And I really think that that is the best tool. Good education, good tools of understanding, the disease process, potential outcomes, and how best to apply it to that patient sitting in the room, so to speak. I always say, when a patient's sitting in front of me and she asks me questions, I go, listen, I don't care about the other 999. If it's one out of 1,000 and you're that one, I care about you because it applies to you. So take all that stuff and throw out, that knowledge, because that's not helping you, because you're the one that's sitting right here. And so, they come in with this list of diets and these list of exercises, and it's like, it's a little bit too much. So I say, let's just take one thing at a time and kind of go through it. And so that's really why I created the company, Provation Life, really to address this gap. And I just share with you one quick vignette. I have a good friend of mine who's she's a dermatologist, and so one of what just to go on a little bit of an aside, I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but this supplement that I developed, and I have a proprietary mix, and we'll go through that a little bit later, but it helps immeasurably on hair growth, and on acne, because it goes right after the hyperandrogenism, as well as other things. Again, we'll get into the details soon, but I said to her, I said, there's so many things that you could tell your patients, these young, teenagers who have the acne and whatnot, and you want to try to get their androgen levels down. I said, there's diets and there's exercise and there's supplements that you could do in addition to the medications. Don't get me wrong. I don't want her to abandon, taking care of these patients just because you want them to be on a specific diet. But she looked at me straight in the eye and she says, the insurance companies don't pay me to counsel my patients. And they just, she's just writing script after script, whether it's for Accutane or whatever the medication is, and creams and gels and antibiotics. And I was like, oh my God, am I doing this wrong? Am I the one who wants to take care of my patients holistically and look at the entire patient, or not just write, a prescription for X, Y, or Z? And she's a really good friend. I didn't want to give her, so much rebuke, but I was so taken aback by that attitude. And it's unfortunately, I hear it all the time. I hear it over and over. The insurance companies don't reimburse me for this time spent or this time spent, and if I spend 2 minutes with them or 20 minutes with them, I'll get the same amount. And I'd rather see 10 patients in the 20 minutes as opposed to one patient. So, that's part of the problem also. And listen, I don't want to waste your time with all the different problems of the medical care and the medical system in the US, but there are definitely things that can be done, things that can be fixed. And so really that's why that was the impetus, that was my drive, that was my really my desire to create this company that would be providing a platform for education of patients, and really helping doctors educate their patients. They can send them to my site. There's no cost to it. It's called education.provationlife.com, and it basically helps patients understand what PCOS is, what hormonal imbalance is, and sure enough, it's it's a first step into really regaining some control. It's a very frustrating disease and syndrome, as you're well aware. And I think that it's funny when you look at the forum that we're talking about now, and all the different social media sites. There's a lot of PCS noise out there, for better or for worse. And what that shows me is that there's a huge need, and so we just have to do it in a way that's addresses the right issues to the right patients, and not just say, oh, eat this diet and go buy this food and have that, and don't eat this, and just try to make sure that you're living the best life that you can. And that's the best thing is you can do is educate yourself.
Yeah, I think you touched on so many great things. One of the biggest ones that I took away from that was the gap that there is between the having PCOS, the patient's knowledge base, right? And that they're not getting that from professionals that they go to seek that education and understanding. And also the goal-based treatment, right? Also having a doctor who's actually going to say, well, what are your goals? Instead of just throwing a medicine at you,
Yeah.
really take into consideration each patient's goals, whether that is conceiving or it's just getting over symptoms, and then going from there. Um, And I think those are all super important topics for, PCOS community to hear. And then also specifically to hear about, the background of this particular supplement, because that's where it comes from and why it's important and why it can be so useful. Um, so you talked a little bit about what led you kind of that frustration of hearing um, the lack of help in the medical field that the patients weren't receiving, and that led you to creating this supplement. But I do want to ask, before creating the supplement, was there any specific treatment plan that you did have for those with PCOS? And obviously, you can't generalize PCOS. It affects everyone
Mhm.
differently and everyone has different goals. But just, I guess, if there were like specific tips you could give, I know you just said do the best that you can with where you're at. Um,
Right. Great question. So this is what I do, and again, I individualize it to the individual patient that's sitting in front of me. But here's the basic structure and foundation that I start with. First of all, as you're aware, there are multiple types of PCOS. By and large, insulin resistance is the number one, number two, number three, number four. But the number two is inflammatory, and then there's adrenal, and then the post pill. So I firmly believe, and I think in medicine in general and in life in general, sometimes we get painted into a corner and we have blinders on for everything else, and it's not life. Life is not like that. We wax and we win. I always tell my patients we're on a pendulum. Pendulums come in and come out. They shift. One day you're here, one day you're there. If you exercise right one day and you eat right one day, you'll be over here, and if not, then you go over here. And I find it to be a uh, once you get painted into a corner, it's hard to get out of that corner. And so when we say, oh, there's 3, 4 types of PCOS, and you're 1, 2, 3, or 4, I think what happens is that they all happen, and sometimes you spend time on this one, and sometimes you're in this one, and sometimes you're not. A patient comes to me and says, well, I had PCOS and I conceived on my own. I said, amazing. It doesn't mean that you're infertile, because it doesn't, but maybe you had a great couple of weeks of diet and exercise, or maybe you were on antibiotics before and that was messing up your gut microbiome. And so, like, there's so many things that are out there. So basically what I do is I sit them down and I say, you're not infertile, you're not infertile, you're not infertile. We just have to work through it. And let's, because a lot of times in my patient population, fertility is like numero uno, dos, and tres. It's like really important. And it's very, very frustrating to them when they don't conceive every month. And so I kind of have to talk them back off the ledge and say, listen, in a fertile couple, they're only going to conceive, 70% in a given year. Okay, just because of just statistics and sperm and egg and hostile environments and friendly environments and timing. And so then they're like, wait, oh, it's not every month. I'm like, no, you kind of have to understand, what the numbers are. Then I say, okay, PCOS is a circle in the middle. And I always do this, and I usually have a paper I write on, and it's like a Venn diagram. I start with diet, and I tell them diet. Now we go through, what they normally eat, how they eat, what they eat, when they eat, and that I move that down to nutrition. So diet and nutrition. The second circle is nutrition. They say, well, what's the difference between diet and nutrition? And I say, well, diet is what you eat, the actual food, okay, and the combination of the protein, the complex carbohydrates, and the fibers, and we tailor it towards this patient. And then the nutrition is when you eat, where you eat, how you eat, with whom you eat. I mean, think about the toxic friends you have that are the best friends from childhood who call you up, on a Saturday night, let's go out, get some pizza and beer. You got to, she's going through something, so you got to support her. You love her, and you want to be there for her. But that's not a good choice for you to be eating, beer and pizza at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, specifically for your PCOS. And so, maybe you could adapt that and say, hey, let's go out for smoothies and a walk, something that could really work into your system. So that's the nutrition bubble. So the first bubble I talk about is diet, and then I talk about nutrition. The next bubble is exercise. Now, obviously the center, bubble doesn't have to be PCOS. It could be weight loss, type 2 diabetes, hypertension. It could be a million things. But specifically for PCOS, there are studied diets and nutritional, aspects of diets that are very, very important. And so, for example, and again, this goes something we could talk about a little bit later about the insulin resistance. Um, when you have insulin resistance, and again, we said the vast majority of PCOS has insulin resistance or some form of it, and so diet order, like food order, like if you have a meal, okay, and in that meal you have a healthy meal and you have protein and fiber and a healthy fats and healthy carbs. For example, you have rice and broccoli and an avocado, okay, and a chicken thigh or what something. So it's a very healthy meal. I love, I eat that, every day of the week if I could have my patients eat that. But if you eat the rice first, okay, people with insulin resistance spike their insulin levels with the rice because it's carbs, and their insulin will go up and it'll stay up. And if you're not active, it's going to be putting all the sugar, all the carbs into the wrong places, into your liver, into your fat cells, and so that's not helpful. Now, then if you go to the fiber and then you go to the fats and protein, so what you want to try to do is start with the healthier carbs, the fibers, the more complex carbohydrates, the broccoli, and then get that in your system, and then move on to the different order of, and then go back to the healthy or to carbs. So it's been proven, very well proven, that food order is important to keep your insulin low. And we'll talk about it a little bit later about why insulin sensitivity and / resistance is so important in PCOS, because it actually directly affects the ovary. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So back to my circle, diet, nutrition, exercise. Now, exercise is very important. What you want to try to do is get into a good exercise regimen. And there are different strokes for different folks. And I don't want to tell you to do, CrossFit or this or that or whatnot. And, if you're just in love with CrossFit and you want to do CrossFit, twice a day, I don't think you can. But I don't want to tell you not to, okay? But there are some exercises that are actually a little bit pro-inflammatory. And if you have more of the inflammatory form of PCOS, then that's probably not doing the best for your gut or your ovaries. And so that inflammation, you want to kind of stay away from the heavy weightlifting, the maxing out at your bench press or whatever is causing some localized inflammation. You also don't want to be stressed. You don't want to put yourself into a high stress. Get your heart rate pumping really, really high, because that's also going to activate your adrenals and activate your cortisol, and your cortisol levels will be higher. And you may feel like you're healthier and stressing your heart, and that's better for cardiovascular health. But in reality, it's actually causing more damage to the adrenal form of PCOS and inflammation. So the exercise is really important to do, and it's also very important to do the right type of exercise. I don't want to sit here and talk about 20 minutes of cardio, 10 minutes of weights, 10. Because I don't think that's going to be beneficial. But again, you asked me, how do I counsel these patients? So I again, a lot of them are informed when I go through these talks with my patients, and I have this very common discussion with them when I ask them about exercise. Like, yeah, I walk up and down the stairs in my house, or I go to drop my kids off at play dates or at school, and so that's my walk. I go, no, it's not. You really need to devote the right time, on the right amount, and so we get so caught up in our days, we don't make any time for ourselves, and it's really tough. And it's really important. And again, remember, because I'm an OBGYN, I see patients in all aspects of their life, from the young until the old, past the reproductive ages. I have the luxury of seeing life. And I always tell patients, I say, listen, I worry about you now, but I'm also worried about you, in your 60s and your 70s. And I'm not thinking that long, but I see it in front of me. And so these little changes now can pay dividends back then. I don't know how much into investing you are, but if what they say, the seventh wonder of the world is capital investing or something, eighth wonder of the world, I forgot. Warren Buffett says something like that. And basically you invest a little now, and it grows, the compounding interest just grows, and just don't look at it. So things that you're doing now, and again, I'm not just talking about PCOS, I'm talking about health, I'm talking about life, I'm talking about cardiovascular health. If you invest a little bit now and make your habits grow, 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 grow. It's going to be pay dividends, and knock your socks off when you're later, and you're seeing your friends, they're not enjoying life in their 50s and 60s, and again, it's a long-term picture. It's a long-term investment. So that exercise is critical. I don't want to digress, but I think it's an important point that actually it goes to your first question about what motivated me. One of my I was sitting, I'm in a small community, so to speak, and I have a lot of, sometimes my friends, we cross over. I was sitting at a table with a patient's parents, and I didn't realize that that these were the parents of a patient of mine, and I was just sitting right next to them, and the mother said, you changed my life and my daughter's life, and I was pleased because I hopefully for the good, because sometimes I'll say things and not that they won't come true, but sometimes it doesn't work out the way that I want it to work out. And I said, oh, for the good, and they're like, yeah, you just changed our lives for the better, and we can't be more grateful. And I try to not to mix business with pleasure, especially as a gynecologist, and but I do want my wife to hear that I am doing good things in the world. So she said 2 years ago when her daughter came to see me, she actually was there. And again, I try to compartmentalize. I try not to, like I said, cross boundaries. So I didn't remember the mother, but I did, remember the daughter. And I made a comment, and as a doctor, you have a lot of throwaway comments. Say, oh, do this, that, and the other thing, and call me in the morning, and then take this and that, and you kind of go through like I have a rote delivery when I talk to a new OB patient. I just kind of go through this thing and do this, that, and the other thing, and and have 3 healthy meals to it, healthy snacks, and you don't think about it. So I said, yeah, go after you eat. She was on weight issues, and we can talk about weight in a second. So she was having weight issues and having difficulty time losing weight. And I said, listen, don't look at the scale. Don't worry about the numbers. I just want you to be healthy. And so after you eat, in the hour after you eat, go outside for 20 minutes, get the sun, activate your vitamin D, get the melatonin, be more active, and get your skeletal muscles working. Okay, do a couple laps for 20 minutes. And she said that's all it took, because what happened was that when after she ate and when her sugar was, everything was broken down to glucose in her body, and her insulin was spiking, her insulin said, where am I going to put this glucose? Okay, where am I going to put this energy? And its job is to take it to where it needs to be done, and it needs to be used. So, our basic functions, and if it has extra, it stores it in the liver and it stores it in the fat cells. And so by telling her that to do that exercise, the insulin took the glucose, the energy, and gave it to the skeletal muscles for immediate use. And she said that she lost weight, she started ovulating, she menstruating, and eventually her daughter conceived, and they have grandkids based on that. And really, I was so taken aback, and this was actually before I started Provation Life, and I said, wow, our words as doctors, words carry so much weight. I said, wow, I wish my kids listened to me like you guys listen to me. and fortunately, I've been really being very careful with the things that I say. It was less not just for me for now, as a doctor and with my experience, you really can impact change. And I've seen patients have the negative happen when they've had bad experiences with doctors and kind of turn off or do the wrong things because the doctors turn them off. And so we in the medical profession really we have to be very careful of the things that we say. And so that exercise that I talk about, again, I know I'm only up to my third circle and I have a few more, is critically important, and so it's also the right exercise and when to do the exercise, how often, and not stressful. Moving right along, the next one I talk about is mental wellness, and I don't say mental illness, and I don't say mental depression or anything like that. I say mental wellness, because unfortunately with PCOS and really many diseases, it's so stressful. And we know that stress activates the cortisol and adrenals and inflammation, and you go down this spiral and it worsens things. And then then you do the Google search and it's infertility and it's anxiety, and then all of a sudden you start spiraling out, and and it's a lot of heavy lifting to get you out of that, and it's really challenging. So I always take time to make sure that not only am I worried about, from here down, I'm worried about from here up. And I very, very often say, from here down is the easy part, right? This is a 5% of my job. From here up is 95% of the job. And if I know that they're okay up here, then the rest of the issues hopefully will align. So what are some of the things that I talk about with mental wellness? Sorry, is the stress, the anxiety. I want to make sure they're not depressed and not down that road. I want to make sure that they're getting enough sleep at night. There are many studies that have shown 7, 8, even up to 9 hours, but who can get 9 hours of sleep? So a couple of the tricks are: take your phone or any of your screens, get rid of them at least an hour to 2 hours before your bedtime. Okay? Don't fall asleep texting. Don't fall asleep watching, scrolling. It's not healthy. You don't get the first hour of sleep is not a good hour because your rods and your cones have been activated. So that would be my first thing. The second thing I tell them to get a good night's sleep is, if you exercise during the day and get the sun on your head, that activates melatonin, that activates the vitamin D. And the more you're out there, the more you're and exercising, the better sleep you're going to get at night. So again, if you learned anything from our time together today, the two things I would say would be exercising after your eating, and two would be getting a good night's sleep, and going outside and making sure that the sun hits you. I don't care if it's 20 degrees below zero. Get the sun on your skin. Okay, that activates vitamin D, and you'll sleep better at night. Okay, so we're still moving along the circle, and I draw this out for them, and each one is individual. And when you're interacting with patients, you see where their eyes light up, you see where they nod their head, you see their positive body movements and body motion. They're not sitting like this, like, what does he have to tell me about my diet? And you kind of have to break some walls down, get through some barriers, and kind of figure out where you resonate with. The next circle is the microbiome. And when I mentioned the word microbiome, your head went up and down, like, yeah, that's totally, if we were in the same room, I'd be like, oh, microbiome all day, because it's my huge pet peeve. I mean, I think we as a society, with our diets, have destroyed our microbiome. With our antibiotics, you go to a doctor for the sniffles, he gives you an antibiotic, boom, you're out. I have so many patients coming with chronic vaginal yeast infections and chronic, yeast infections everywhere, and bacterial infections, because they've just destroyed their microbiome. And when you scratch the surface a little bit about the microbiome, you can see how many diseases, like we have. If you don't know what a microbiome is, I know you do, but some of your listeners or watchers may not. We are covered in bacteria, head to toe. Okay. And in our guts, there are thousands, if not millions, of different strands of bacteria, and thousands and millions of each one of those. And there are different genres, like, the ecosystems. So because if you have a lot of this type of ecosystem, you're prone to diabetes and obesity and metabolic syndrome and PCOS. If you're prone to and cardiovascular disease, if you're prone to this one, you have autoimmune disorders and neurodegenerative disorders and different types of cancers, and lupus. And there's so many studies that have been shown that patients with these diseases are more apt to have these type of microbiomes. And so, and then the healthier patients have a very unique microbiome. So it's fascinating that you can actually adapt your microbiome by the things you eat, when you eat, and also the things you don't eat. All the processed foods, and going to any supermarket, it's like it's unreal. Not staying healthy with the other things we talked about are really doing yourself a tremendous disservice. So in PCOS, there's a very unique microbiome that is more often found in that genre of metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and it's very distinct. And maybe we can go on another episode, so to speak, to go into the deepness of the microbiome, because I can go on that, for hours. But
For sure, yeah.
yeah, so we're actually developing at Provation Life. We're developing a unique, proprietary mix of specific microbiome bacteria that would help, probiotics, prebiotics, symbiotics combination, that helps, because you can't change your microbiome like that. You're like, well, then why don't I just do X, Y, or Z? Because there are many drug companies trying to get patients healthier microbiomes or get them away from a diseased microbiome, and it's very difficult. Um, and again, we could talk about the ails of the pharmaceutical development system on why people aren't doing it, because it doesn't pay money. So they're not going to do the clinical trials. But we know that if you do X, Y, or Z to your microbiome, you feel better because of these things. And so, yeah, so microbiome is massive. So we're coming out with a proprietary combination, specifically to help, one of these circles, so to speak. Um, then next is supplements. Okay, I only have two more circles left. Supplements, and so over the course of my career, I was always reading all the research, all the mass journals, all the throwaway journals, and all the peer review journals. And every couple of weeks, I'd get another journal article that says people with severe PCOS or any PCOS or have a better response to infertility treatments if they take these vitamins and these supplements. People who have the acne and the hair losses or hair growths because of PCOS do better if they take these supplements. And over the course of my career, I kept seeing these supplements over and over and over again. And so I started recommending these things to my patients. I said, start taking these supplements, A, B, C, and D. And then, as you may be aware, the insulin resistance, in PCOS has a lot of overlap with type 2 diabetes. So
Yes.
many years ago, they started giving a type 2 diabetes medication called glucophage or metformin. Now, that medication is specifically geared towards type 2 diabetes insulin resistance, and it helps to bring down the sugar levels in diabetics. And so, I started really looking into, like, it was not that it was funny, but I remember when I started learning about this over 30 years ago, a little less than 30 years ago, they said, we don't know why it works, but we know that patients on glucophage with PCOS ovulate better, conceive better, et cetera, et cetera. But they don't really tolerate the glucophage because it causes nausea, and sometimes they're throwing up and they have upset stomach, and they don't, and they're big pills, and they stay on it for a couple of weeks and sometimes months, but they just don't last. And if you look at like 90% of patients that have started on glucophage, for in PCOS are not on it within 6 months. Okay, those are the statistics. So, but I just started scratching my head and saying, okay, maybe we don't need the glucophage. Maybe there are other things we could do to help the patients with their insulin resistance. And yeah, I started looking into that, and I started saying, hey, look at these supplements for type 2 diabetes. What is the common factor here? The insulin resistance. So I started taking patients who had PCOS and insulin resistance and putting them on the PCOS supplements and on the type 2 diabetes supplements. They didn't have type 2 diabetes, because I would tell you, I can't tell you how many times I would get phone calls, not just from the pharmacist, but from the patients, who, like, a week after I saw them, they're like, oh, I went to the pharmacist and he said, it's a diabetes medication. I don't have diabetes. So why did you give it to me? And then they get mad at me. Right. And I'm like, oh, well, you really weren't listening to what I was telling you. It's like, and the pharmacist wasn't being your friend, although he or she was thinking that they were helping you, because they want to double check the doctor, because medical errors, medication errors are really bad. And so I said, you don't have. So now whenever I write for the medication, which isn't that often anymore, I say, you don't have diabetes, but we know that it works because of A, B, C, and D, and then they understand why they're taking it. So here's the catch. I started telling the patients to take literally like 10 different supplements. And then I would get all the phone calls. When do you take it? Where do you take it? How do you take it? With what do you take it? With food, without food? When, and I just said, this really, I want to help my patients, but I have to see patients. I can't deal with all these questions all the time. So that actually led me to the creation of my baby. Okay, I said there's so much research on these ingredients, and I don't know if you really could read them, but you can go on my website and see the inositol, magnesium, zinc, potassium, berberine, turmeric, uh, chromium, cinnamon, coenzyme Q. All of these have anti-inflammatory. They have insulin resistance, all at different aspects of the insulin curve. Like when like we talked about the inositol, it works as what we call a second messenger. It helps the insulin work to get the sugar, the glucose into the cells. So if the insulin is resistant, if you're insulin resistant, the insulin's not working, so your insulin's got to bump up more. But if you have a healthy second messenger system that's helping the insulin work, then your insulin is not bumping up. Elevated insulin goes to the level of the ovaries and what's called the theca cells, and causes the theca cells actually to pump out more androgens, the testosterone and the LH and all the different androgens that can cause some of those downstream effects, like the hair growth and the acne and the hair loss where you want it, hair growth where you don't want it, and the difficult losing weight and all these different aspects of insulin resistance. So the inositol and the cinnamon, the chromium and the berberine, these have all and everything else in there has actually different aspects of the second messenger system to help insulin work more effectively and improve your insulin sensitivity and decrease your insulin resistance. So I've actually tested this on myself. I did a continuous glucose monitor, those for diabetics.
Yep,
And
yep.
I said, listen, I've been preaching this for years. I want to see if it actually works. I know that it works because the patients are coming back to me pregnant, ovulating. I have one patient, she says she only menstruates when she's taking the powder. And I said, well, then why are you not taking the powder? And she was like, well, she's kind of using it almost as a birth control. I'm like, that's not what I want you to do. I said, yeah. I said, like, she's like, I don't want
If
to get
it
pregnant.
works, it works. You
Yeah,
got a saying on TikTok, a win is a win.
a win is a win. Yeah, win is a win. Mm. Yeah. So I remember one time. This really spurred me. I know this patient of mine's father. I'm friendly with him. He's a doctor, a primary care doctor in Staten Island, and I told her this whole laundry list of things, a shopping list of the different supplements to get. And she told her father, can he get it? And he goes and he sends me a picture. He WhatsApps me a picture. And there literally are 5 like bottles of the inositol and this and the chromium and the cinnamon and this and that. And I just looked at I just put my head in my hand. I said, yeah, that those are that. I said, it must have cost you $500 to buy all of them. And he's like, yeah, it was like $250, and I was shocked. And I said, I got to do something to change this. So I put
That's when the
everything.
light went off.
The light went off, and I said, this is a no-brainer. So I put it all into one. I said, take one in the morning, one at night, big scoop, and you're going to get enough inositol and chromium. And a lot of times patients are like, well, everyone else is saying 3 to 4 grams of inositol, and some people say that you need to have the D-Chiro and the Myo, and the truth of the matter is that we in our bodies produce enough D-Chiro, and we don't have there's this ratio 40 to 1, and the fact is that if you take too much D-Chiro, you actually could be doing damage. So instead of putting the D-Chiro inositol into my mixture, I wanted to stay away from that because it actually could be causing damage if you get too much of that that perfect 40 to 1. because if it's not 40-1, you could actually be causing more damage than good. And obviously, my goal is not to cause damage. And most of the data and the studies are just on the myo-inositol as well. So I have the myo-inositol, I have the chromium and berberine, and so as I was saying, I was testing it. So I ate some, I popped up my sugar, and then I took the supplement, and I ate the same exact thing, and I wanted to see what my sugar did over the course of the day, and sure enough, it blunted the response. And so it wasn't that my insulin didn't spike; it was that my insulin that was being, because I don't have type 2 diabetes, the insulin that was being secreted was actually more effective, and so that was why my sugars didn't spike the way, again, within a healthy amount. It also has red yeast. Now, red yeast has been proven to show a few things. It actually lowers cholesterol. Okay, it actually potentiates the inositol, and patients who have been on inositol and red yeast combination have, this is a study with PCOS, have a more success rate in IVF. So if they're going through IVF and with PCOS, and they're on myo-inositol and red yeast, so I said, why don't I add the red yeast to this mixture? It's helpful, and so it actually, my first patients that were on my powder called me after they took it, and they go, is it normal that my appetite is decreased? And I go, and is that something to worry about? I go, no, that's amazing. So what this does is that because your insulin isn't spiking, you are not craving an hour after you eat. Your cravings are gone, and your appetite is decreased. And when you do eat, you eat the healthy proteins, and you're going to get this muted insulin levels in your body. So I actually started taking my mixture, and I don't need the ovarian support so much, but I dropped my cholesterol levels. My appetite was like, I don't want to say absent, but decreased. I lost 10 pounds within like a month. And I couldn't be happier with it. And my energy level is up, and I gave it to my wife, and she lost a couple pounds, and her energy was up, and she feels great. I just got a text message from a patient of mine who was just thrilled, and she and I, she's been a patient. She's a relatively newer patient of mine. I want to read it to you because it's, sorry, I have to find it. The busy world we live in, we get sidetracked. Where is it?
Yeah, and
Well,
also if you send me a screenshot, like crop it, I can put it in the video when I edit it too. So they're
okay,
actually able to see.
wonderful. Yeah. Gosh, where is it? So I can send it to you. She basically said, she knows that she knows that it's the where is it? I want her. Yeah, here we are. She goes, hi, Dr. Weiss, it's so and so. I hope all is well. I've been trying to get an appointment with you to talk about the Provation Life powder, but there isn't any availability to see me. I'm booked up. I've been taking it nonstop for the last almost 3 months. I need a lifetime supply! Exclamation point. I've been feeling amazing on it. My periods the last 3 cycles have been on time, on its own, and I barely had any cramps, and I'm sure it's from the powder. Also, my digestion and energy have been so much better. However, I actually was going to the fertility doctor that was planned, because I'm not against medication, and we'll finish my circle in a second. But then she says, after getting my own period on my own, I got pregnant. So she was getting ready to go through a medicated cycle, and she got pregnant, and her beta HCG was positive, and now she's asking me about the powder, and I said, wow. I said, that's amazing. Get on come and see me. We'll go through the bloods and the sonograms, and we'll get you on the prenatal vitamins, the omega-3s. And, we didn't talk about omega-3s, and it's not in my powder, but patients with PCOS should be on omega-3s. And that was like, this is why I do what I do. To have the patients getting back in touch with me and say, your powder's amazing. I'm having all these secondary positive effects. She lost weight. I had one patient call me, and she said she lost 7 pounds. That was amazing. She goes, I have PCOS. She just delivered, actually, And she goes, she has a hard time losing weight after delivery, and she's so frustrated by it. And so she said she wanted my powder. She took the powder. She called me back a month later. She's like, I need more. I lost 7 pounds, like more than I could imagine. She was feeling amazing. So yeah, so it's like these are the type of things that I like to hear back. And I, of course, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe in it. And I want to get the message out to as many patients and many followers as I can to really say, hey, individualize, make sure you know what's right for you, because the last circle I have, okay, is medication, because I am a doctor. This isn't witch potion, or a snake oil. It works. There's a biochemical and a scientific, research-driven approach and reason why it works. And like in life, nothing is 100%. It may not work for you. You may need medication. You may need go on birth control to prevent pregnancy and also to control your periods. You may need infertility workup, but listen, it's a process to get to that. This isn't harm. It's not going to do any harm, and it's going to, most likely do well for you in many aspects of your life. So that's kind of, you asked me one simple question, I think, and I think I covered a lot. But basically, that was really where what I do when a PCOS patient comes in. I am so
Yeah.
sorry that I went off on you like that.
No, I think you actually addressed all of the questions that I had, because I'm trying to look now, like, what was my next one, but they're pretty much covered. Um, and especially I like closing off on that because there are so many other things that people with PCOS can try before medication.
Yeah,
And so I think that that was an important flow to understand. There are a lot of options to try, and sometimes it's not going to work for everyone. PCOS affects people differently, and sometimes there is a need for medication depending on people's goals and things like that. But I
yeah,
think kind of the seeing so many results from taking this supplement only further proves that I think there's a huge problem with, a micronutrient deficiency that a lot of people with
yep,
PCOS suffer from, as well as, having microbiome issues. And so when those things are addressed, we see a lot of people overcome symptoms, um, and their bodies kind of start to heal. So yeah, I'm trying to look for my next question. I think that
yeah,
was really all
yeah.
of it. The only question I do have for you now is, I was gonna ask, how do you take the supplement for it to work successfully? You said 1 scoop in the morning and 1 scoop in the evening.
Yeah, or
Gotcha. N
afternoon. And
Is that with meals?
it's better not with meals because it kind of
Okay.
interferes with absorption. This particular one is a chocolate flavored, and some people may not like that. So what I've been doing is recommending it. Sometimes in warm water makes it go down a little bit easier. It doesn't.
Mhm.
I actually take mine. I wake up in the morning, I have my coffee and my scoop right next to my water machine, and warm milk actually makes it go down a little bit better. Sometimes I
Mhm.
put it in my coffee. But again, everyone's tastes are different. Some
Yeah.
people put it on oatmeal, some people put it in yogurt. But it's the consistency,
Gotcha.
and so it's really important that you do it, and you do it with a good consistency.
Consistency.
And
And how long does it take to kinda see some of those positive changes happening?
so I had a patient who came to me. She had a little almost like a goatee. Unfortunately, she had hyperandrogenism and hirsutism, and she came to me, and again, a classic overweight and struggling, really difficult, and trying to do all the right things. I started her on, and she had really coarse hair, like black hair. I started her on the powder, in addition to doing the workup and the blood work and seeing if she was ovulating or not. And within a month, she came back. She said she already started to see the hair growth had changed colors. Had gone to I don't know if you're familiar with hair growth, but there's like early growth, mid growth, late growth in hair, and so had already regressed from like the coarse dark hair to light, more of the peach fuzz hair. This was dark hair, and that gone to the peach fuzz hair. It was already regressing after 1 month on it. So her which I don't really see. Well, when I talk about hair growth or hair loss, I always say you have to wait at least 6 months, because anything that happened 6 months ago is affecting you now. Anything you do now will affect you in 6 months. You have to be patient with the hair growth. I think and so also the acne, because it's shifting down. So So I always want patients to be patient, doing all these things on my cycle, right? On that wheel. I want them to do all those things on the wheel in parallel, in tandem, and start to see effects. And it could take up to a few months. All the clinical trials and all the studies on the myo-inositol and the chromium and the cinnamon, these patients are on it for 12 to 16 weeks. So it's a long time, and that's when you see the effects. I
Yeah.
draw a lot of labs on my patients, and I'm seeing, basically what's happening is that they're actually bumping up their sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG, and that's actually like leaching out all their high
Testosterone.
androgen levels and testosterone.
Gotcha.
Exactly. So it
Nice.
takes time. You're not going to see it change overnight, and I think that's also a lesson that you guys are great at. I want to say you guys, the TikTok stars and the Instagram
Yeah.
stars are really great at saying, listen, you gotta be consistent, and you gotta be patient, and you just got to make small wins, make
Yeah.
little changes that you could take care of, that you could do, that you could work with.
Yeah.
um
I think a couple of big keys and takeaway from this interview are there needs to be a holistic approach when it comes to PCOS. It's not
mhm,
just about finding the perfect supplement. It's not just about exercising. It's not just about diet. It's kind of this holistic approach um, when it comes to PCOS. And the other thing is consistency
yeah,
and being patient because it does take time.
yeah.
Um, is there anything? I think you addressed really honestly all of my questions, and I've learned some things with you, and I would like to even do another video where we can kind of dive into some other topics like the Venn diagram and talking about the microbiome. Um,
Yeah.
but is there anything else that you would like to share with the PCOS community uh, in
I,
regards to PCOS and the supplement itself?
so again, I think I've touched on a lot. I think you just kind of summarized it really well. It's um, you know, life is a journey, and if you're not moving and you're standing still, on an escalator, I could do every cliche out there. You're going to be moving backwards. Okay, so you just got to make forward progress. I always tell patients in the battle, if you got to eat right and exercise, if you've done both of those things every day, you won that day. You have to have more wins than losses. And every day could be a push. If you didn't do either, go outside, get your half hour, 45 minutes of exercise. Try to make your little wins. Try to make progress, and don't be discouraged. I think one of the biggest thing is I don't know if you there's a book that I could recommend. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a fabulous book, and basically it describes how to make positive changes in your life, and you have to make incremental small changes and make that part of you. Don't say I want to lose 30 pounds or whatever, 10 pounds. You say I want to be the person who exercises and eats right. If you end up losing, then that's the positive, but that's who you want to be. You want to change who you are. You have a goal ahead of you, right? You have this goal, and you try to do things to reach that goal. And this is time. And you say, well, I'm doing all these things over time, and I'm not reaching the goal. I'm not getting where I want to get to. And I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm kind of like just still stagnating. And so what happens is that you start making some progress, but most often people give up before they see the real progress, the goal or achieving. And this is called the valley of tears, of failure, of despair. And it's across the board, whether it be for PCOS or weight loss or metabolic syndrome, diabetes, or investing, right? You fall off here. But if you keep at it and keep at it and keep at it, all of a sudden, not the goal should not be your goal. It should be directional. I want to go in this direction. I don't want to hit the goal. What happens is that you're going to see, you're going to turn around, and you're going to be above your goal and shooting past it. And so that's what I try to encourage my patients and try to say, listen, let's try to do these things, little setbacks here or there, but always keep that forward momentum. And that's really that's the way that I try to counsel my patients and go from there. So this is a lot of fun. 54 minutes of
Yes.
robust discussion. I'd be more than happy to jump on and talk more about the microbiome, more about the specific aspects of how the supplement actually works. Because I think if
Hmm.
people understand why we're doing this, they'll understand how it works and really what we're getting to the bottom of.
Yes. And I think it's important to understand how it works, and get that education behind why you're taking something. One of
Yep.
my favorite things about this product, and I do want to say this before we get off, is that it addresses not just like insulin resistance and obviously PCOS, but I think a lot of supplements kind of, or a lot of people when they talk about PCOS don't really address the fact that it's just as much like a metabolic condition, an issue, as much as it is a hormonal condition. And I feel like this supplement kind of addresses both of those things really, really well, which is why I'm really excited to share more information about this product. And I do also want to say, make sure you guys go follow because they have an account on TikTok and on Instagram. And if you check out their website, which is linked in my bio, they have a about me page that goes over the ingredients list, but it also has links to research. And I think that that's really useful because a lot of people always ask me like, oh, is there research and things that I can read? So a lot of great information on there.
Yep.
um, and a lot of good more content to come. Check out the link in my bio, and make sure you check out their Instagram and TikTok.
Excellent.
And
All right.
thank you for coming on, taking the time to sit down and talk to me today.
My pleasure. It was really, again, you see that it's my passion, so I don't mind talking about it.
Yeah.
I don't mind help, just trying to help. And again, if you can get, as a doctor, when I see one patient, I'm helping the micro. If I can help 1,000, a million patients, followers of yours, that could be the macro.
Yes.
And
Amazing.
I think that would be really amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, so if you follow our page, we very often and subscribe. I send out newsletters with the latest research. I send out codes for um, you know discount codes. So we're really we're excited, and things and the feedback we're getting from patients is amazing. So good luck on your journeys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Make sure to follow, guys. Follow for more PCOS content. All right. I'm going to end the broadcast now.
Okay.